Welcome back to Coinscrum Markets. I'm Tina Baker-Taylor, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jesse Proudman from Strix Leviathan and now CEO of Makara. Hey, Jesse.
Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you back. Thanks so much for joining us. So congratulations on the launch of Makara, the first SEC registered cryptocurrency robo-advisor, which I think is really cool. I'm excited to learn more about it. So tell us more about this. It sounds like Makara has morphed out of Strix Leviathan, the crypto hedge fund that you co-founded back in 2018. So what are the main drivers for setting up the fund in the first place, and what strategies and technologies are coming out of that in the way of Makara?
Yeah, great question. So if we rewind to 2017, my prior company was acquired by IBM, and I spent all of 2017 as a distinguished engineer and entrepreneur in residence at IBM, effectively researching the crypto markets. My job was to launch a blockchain-oriented accelerator. And over that period of time, I took a little bit of money personally and I turned it into a lot of money and then back to a little bit of money in the midst of that market cycle. And it occurred to me here that A, there had to be a better way to invest in these markets. And B, through that time frame, really began to form this thesis that these markets really lack or have, I should say, opaque fundamental value. And so the reason you believe Bitcoin's worth something and the reason I believe it's worth something is different, which makes most of the price action behavioral. It's fear and greed that drive these markets to a large extent. And so Strix was founded on this notion that if markets move in a behavioral fashion, that can be identified using patterns within the pricing data. And so we spent the last 3 years building this software platform for institutional funds to be able to identify those patterns and trade off of them. And that business has gone phenomenally well. But that business is an exempt reporting advisor. It's registered as a 3C7 hedge fund, which means we can only work with qualified purchasers. So that's $5 million in investable assets and up. And we've always had this desire to do something much broader to be able to help a larger audience have access to the space. And we realized, like, by far and large, there are millions of early adopters here, but there's an even larger segment of the population that sits on the sidelines because this asset class is too intimidating. It's scary. Everything's named the same thing. You've got to learn a whole new lexicon to participate. And people don't want to make mistakes, right? Nobody wants egg on their face. So instead of getting involved, they sit on the sidelines. And we discovered that through a bunch of our conversations on the Strix side. And we've been searching for a mechanism to get new people involved in the markets. And so coming up with this SEC registered investment advisor, we realized this was a way to open up this asset class to a whole new world of market participant that otherwise isn't here.
Okay, so before we shift away from Strix, what are the main lessons that you learned on behalf of kind of running the fund and those investors that were bumps that you needed to iron out that kind of identified that this was it just that you wanted to reach a market that didn't have 5 million in investable income? I'm assuming there are other inhibitors that this is looking to address.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what's exciting to me about these markets is that I really think they're akin to liquid angel investing. And so angel investing, you're making early stage investments in technology companies with the hope that some of them are wildly successful. And the best deals in angel investing have sort of always been withheld to certain people. And even there, like, you have to be an accredited investor to participate. And it's sort of it's an exclusionary market. Crypto, in my eyes, is one of the first asset classes that is similar to angel investing. Here we have the ability for anybody to go invest in early stage technology projects. And that's really exciting. I think it's the first time this type of investment has been open to the world, to anybody, to let anybody participate. But it's been unapproachable. And so the Nest Fund, that was our way to try to make this asset class approachable in the construct of a hedge fund. And then the Makara offering, it's our way to make this asset class approachable to everybody.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the product itself. So what components have you taken either from the marketplace demand or from the Strix lessons learned to build and launch Makara? And what does the product itself look like to the end users kind of out of the box?
Yeah, this is the neatest part. So we've at Strict spent the last 3.5 years building this technology platform, investment platform we call Octopus. And what we come to recognize is that it's one of the most comprehensive end-to-end platforms in market today for anybody running sort of institutional style funds. So on the Makara side, like if we think traditional robo-advisory in traditional equities, they had to go build the technology to manage the accounts and to manage the relationship and to give the advice. They didn't have to go build all the ETFs, right? The ETFs have existed and they just were able to kind of package them up and deliver those. That doesn't exist here in crypto. There are no ETFs. We may get a Bitcoin ETF at some point this year. Maybe we may get an Ethereum ETF at some point next year, but the space just moves too quickly for sort of that type of regulated product to keep up with what's happening here. And so we came to recognize that if we could create the equivalent of an ETF, and in the Makara language, we call it a themed basket. If we could sort of package this asset class into an investment structure that removes the complexity, removes the language barrier, and makes it approachable to end users, that could solve a lot of the problems. And the Octopus platform gives us the ability to design and operate those investment baskets in a way that we can make them available to Makara clients. So this really it's the culmination of all of the work we've done over the last 3.5 years on the Strict side to build that technology platform that allows us to deliver the product to end users.
Cool.
In terms of
how many assets do you have that people are able to trade? So like what's in the baskets?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at launch, there'll be about 6 different baskets. The first will be the universe basket. So you can think of that as kind of the Russell 2000 equivalent. Like if you just want broad-based exposure to the market, you can purchase into this basket. And it offers all of the investable assets on platform, which I believe is about 45 today. So as a registered investment advisor, we do not hold client capital. We work with a qualified custodian who manages the client capital on behalf of the user. And we're able to kind of trade and manage that for them. And so at launch, we're working with Gemini as our qualified custodian and as our trade execution partner. So the assets that are supported by Gemini are the universe of assets that we have are the ability to deliver to our clients. In addition to that, we have a variety of different baskets, like a DeFi basket that takes some of the complexity around accessing the decentralized finance space, being able to hold the actual protocol tokens. There's an inflation hedge basket that's a combination of Paxos Gold and Bitcoin. It's a way for new market participants who may be concerned about inflation, but not quite sure about Bitcoin as its sole investment. It's a way for them to gain exposure to the space. We have what we call the blue chip baskets, so sort of large cap investments. And so again, it's the thesis here is how can we take all of the complexity of all of these different assets with different names and put them into human language, into language that anybody can understand and make decisions around investing in.
Well, I think that sounds amazing, especially when I hear things like DeFi baskets, because I know that there's a lot of people that are interested in the space, but certainly if you were a more sophisticated or a more traditional type investor, and you're looking to maybe get off the funds into this space, and you've heard about DeFi, there's a lot to learn, right? There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of projects, and some of them are doing some great things, and some of them are very complicated and technical. And so how does somebody that doesn't spend all day, reading Medium posts and listening to podcasts and talking to people figure this out, right? So if you just want exposure to DeFi, it sounds like you can just kind of like a money market, tick that box and say, yeah, give me some advice.
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. And then the other neat component is that we really want to pair these investments with education. There was this CNBC article that came out about 3 weeks ago that said 1 in 3 investors in this asset class don't actually understand what they're investing in. And that hurts my heart. Like I want people to know what they're involved in when they're making investments here. And we think that people participate in this asset class for 2 reasons. 1, the gains are compelling. Like that's an obvious reason. And 2, they're curious, right? Like it's a fascinating space and it's changing so quickly. And so we want to pair investments with a stream of information, both sort of editorial and written content, as well as short videos, so that people that are investing in something like a DeFi basket begin to understand and can be able to talk about what they're actually investing in and why it's exciting to them.
So what's the typical user profile look like for this product? Who's it been designed for specifically? Do you have some customer profiles that, you've kind of said, look, it's this type of customer and this type of customer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we define some customer profiles as all startups do. And then we've been pleasantly surprised as the waitlist has grown to see sort of interest from a wide swath of investor. I think that the original thesis was that this is ideal for what we consider kind of the working professional, somebody that's working 50, 60 hours a week in their job and then comes home and spends time with their family, just doesn't have time to go do all the research on these individual assets, exactly like what you're describing, right? Not going to come home at 8 p.m. at night and jump on Medium and read blog posts, but there's interest in the asset class. So being able to gain exposure without having to spend 3 months understanding what's happening here. But what we've quickly discovered, like there is so many people that are they're curious about this asset class and they don't know where to get started. It's like the last thing we need is another crypto exchange. We don't need another place to buy Bitcoin. What we need is a place for people to feel comfortable and safe getting investment advice that kind of matches their interests into the appropriate investable assets here in this asset class.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what are the key features that people can benefit from when they start trying to kind of make some of these investments themselves? Like, how does it actually work? What is the interface like?
Yep. So it'll be a mobile first application. So we're launching that towards the end of this month. So you'll download the app, you'll go through a customer identification process, and then you'll have your account established. You'll be able to onboard capital 3 ways. You can transfer money over ACH from your bank account through wire or through crypto deposit. And then you go through sort of an initial process that really tries to identify your interests. Why are you investing in this space at all? Is it because you're concerned about inflation? Is it because you've just heard about Bitcoin and find it interesting? Is it because you're fascinated with the asset class as a whole? I'm sort of steering you into which one of these baskets sort of makes the most sense for your profile. Mm-hmm. You're able to kind of look through the breadth of the options and then make selections. And this is, this is not something where you're saying, I'm going to buy Bitcoin and I'm going to buy Litecoin and I'm going to do market orders and limit orders. Like all of that language and experience we think is too complex or too heavy for most folks. You're basically saying, I like this basket and I'm going to subscribe to it. And then your capital is deployed into that vehicle and rebalanced over time. And then in addition to that, we have the ability to dollar cost average into these vehicles. So as we think about ways to actively participate in the space, like it's very hard to time these markets. And so being able to slowly roll into a position and have that automatically deployed into the different baskets that you're in, that's a big part of the experience. So really simplicity is key here. Again, normal everyday language is key. Removing a lot of the challenge around different asset names and conventions and exchange complexity. We just want to make it simple.
Yeah. So what does it take for the new user to onboard? Is it only available to US residents? I'm assuming, you're approved by the SEC, so there's going to be some customer due diligence there. Talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the US is our launch market. So we do have our SEC registration, which gives us the ability to operate here. We will look at expanding internationally over 2021 and 2022, but we're focused on the initial launch in the United States. Onboarding is pretty simple. You would download the app and go through the customer identification process. So you're uploading a copy of your ID or your passport. The accounts are all created for you. And then you're able to browse and fund your account. So we've really tried to make the process as quick and painless as possible and as simple as possible.
Awesome. So one of the things that we've talked about before, and I think that these types of more customer-centric access points are really the direct result of some of the infrastructure in the industry improving. So what would you say between kind of starting off in 2017 to now, what's here today that is better? Custody, maybe something, for example, that didn't exist before that's enabled this product to come to market?
Yeah, I mean, the space has evolved just in an unbelievable way over the last 4 years. And custody is arguably one of the most important and the largest aspects. I think if we rewind to 2017, 2018, and particularly 2018, as the markets went through its sort of bear period, there was this argument that institutions will come and that institutional capital will create sort of the next rise in price. And the challenge there was that these institutions, they didn't have a place to custody these assets that sort of met the regulatory requirements that they have. And we see that on the Makara side, right? As a RIA, we are legally required to work with a qualified custodian to hold those assets. And arguably, like, that didn't exist in 2017. So there have been so many changes in these markets that have allowed us to actually be able to deliver this product at all. And then the service providers just being able to, they've made their offerings more sophisticated. So Gemini, for example, has built all of the technology we need to go in and manage all these separately managed accounts. And that didn't exist, 12 months ago. And so just, as we've seen the markets evolve, we've just seen so many new products become available as a function of that underlying infrastructure that otherwise couldn't have been delivered. Fantastic.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the SEC authorization that is new mean feet. What was that process like, excuse me, and what kind of protections does that actually provide to the customer?
Yeah, so the SEC process, it's a pretty fascinating process, and it was pretty involved. So we started in November, and we were granted the license in March 30th.
That's fast.
It was fast. Our team worked really hard on all of the documentation, and we've worked with this phenomenal firm called Aspect Advisors, who's really helped us get sort of all of our ducks in a row. So big compliments to them and to Sadie, my co-founder, who drove that process. Like, without the two of them, I don't think we'd be here. But effectively, the process is around defining, like, what is the experience? What can a customer expect? How do these baskets work? How do we charge clients? How do we invest money? And documenting that into a set of regulatory documents that get filed with the SEC. So it's both fast and I think in our world felt slow and quite a bit of work. But in our eyes, it's a pretty neat kind of mark, in that so much of the crypto industry has really spent energy doing everything they can to avoid regulation. Because it's hard and it's challenging, it's not fun. And we really wanted to go the opposite route. We wanted to embrace regulation and approach this in a construct that people are familiar with. I think, like, investment advisors, people generally understand that concept. And so again, if the objective here is to make this asset class accessible to people that otherwise aren't in the asset class, wrapping it in a wrapper that they understand, I think was really key.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So there's been some, discussion around taxes. That's a big thing that people struggle with at the moment. And I know that, different exchanges are trying to come up with tax solutions, and there's, crypto tax apps and stuff that you can engage with. How did you guys approach that tax implication within the advisory experience here?
Yeah, so we've had the benefit of working with some phenomenal firms over the last 3 years on the strict side, on the tax and audit perspective. And so very early on, as we launched Makara, we engaged with them to think through ways to make this easier for clients. And you're exactly right. I mean, I think it's a giant challenge that people don't really think about as they begin to participate. And it's only until they start to answer that box that now appears on your tax forms, did you participate in any crypto trading? And you go, oh, like this could be a challenge. And I remember, like, I had a spreadsheet in 2017 that I was using to try to track all the individual lots. Like, it's a disaster for folks, particularly when you have to go back after the fact. So the thesis in Makara is really to try to simplify that experience. And if everything is kind of contained within the walls of the Makara environment, we have all of the data we need to prepare tax documents for a user at the end of the year. So really simplicity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we don't want people to have to go figure it out, and keeping it all within the bounds of one environment really drives that simplicity. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: do you think that we're on the verge? I mean, I'm asking you this a couple of days after Shiba impacted the market in a number of different ways, but are we on the verge of seeing a broader range of products and services come to market that are focused on helping to de-risk the investment experience for consumers?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because at the end of the day, this entire asset class, it's very risky, right? It's a
Right.
speculative asset class, and we thought originally about this onboarding survey. Like if you go to a traditional robo-advisor, their job is to figure out sort of what's your risk tolerance and to invest you accordingly. And here in crypto, we have
You're
risky
already
risk.
off the chart. Yeah.
Right. So it's not possible. So I think that's where the educational component really comes into play, that it's really important for investors to understand what this asset class is, that it is early stage speculative investing, that these assets, while they can appreciate in value tremendously, they also can depreciate very quickly in value. And so it'll be interesting to see sort of how different companies and firms think about that, right? The exchanges, their entire value proposition and revenue stream is derived on getting you to trade. They make money off trading fees. And so of course they're incentivized. I mean, if you just look at Twitter over the last week, it's just a bombardment of Doge ads for different exchanges trying to get you to buy or sell on their platform, because that's where they make money. It's great for them. And I'm glad that those venues are available for people, but that doesn't feel safe or sustainable, just kind of pushing people into the latest fad because you profit off of it. So again, kind of thinking through, how do we educate people about this asset class before they deploy capital? And then how do we continue to educate them as they participate? And it's not to say I don't think Doge is an interesting investment. Like I think there's all kinds of fascinating things that implies about these markets. So it's not a perspective on an individual asset by asset basis, but it's really thinking through holistically, how do we get people to understand what's happening here?
Yeah. Well, and so, understanding that you guys kind of came to the market in 2017, a lot's happened since then. And I do see some similarities, around this bull run compared to the last. But I think that investors, there's more crypto asset investors. There's more people participating. There's more information available. We have a little bit more knowledge around, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? So, you would hope that there's some lessons learned that have carried forward into this bull run. But I think one of the things that newcomers especially are still missing is that kind of educational piece. And as you say, when you're getting bombarded on Facebook or Twitter with the latest new meme coin, I mean, that might be a great investment if that's what you're looking for, right? But just be able to distill the information around, when you're talking about a blue chip basket, what exactly is in that? So I guess the last question would be kind of looking at advisory. How do you guys approach the positioning of those investments in kind of I don't want to say the moral context, but without making a judgment, right? This is what is in here and not having potentially an opinion.
Yeah, I think that's the neat thing. So as an RIA, we're prohibited from making our income off of trading fees. So it doesn't matter which baskets you're holding for us or what assets you're holding, or like ostensibly using it. Like this isn't a trading platform, right? Like our objective and our goal is to get people invested in the things that make the baskets that make the most sense to them, and that really pique their interests in the best possible way. And so being able to sort of recognize that fact and then present all of these different options with clear language so that people do understand what they're buying, that's, I think, what will really set us apart. This isn't a matter of kind of getting people to buy into the latest fad. It's a function of getting people to really understand what's happening in this asset class, because it's a phenomenal and interesting asset class, and then to participate in a way that logically makes sense for them and where they are in their journey.
That's awesome. Jesse, it sounds great. I'm really excited to see it go live. I think that this personally solves a lot of challenges that people are experiencing now. And I think you and I both, there is, the phone call that you get from your dad, or, your brother that thought you were crazy. That was on the phone to you. He wants to know what Doge is. There's, people start coming out of the woodwork in the middle of a bull run. And I think having somewhere that people can go invest in the space with a little bit more kind of context around what they're doing is pretty compelling. And the fact that it's regulated is great.
Yeah, you know, we've been everybody on the team has been receiving those same text messages. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about XYZ? And it's, you know, I think.
Well, and you said that, you know, the industry is kind of built on fear a little bit. It's also hopium, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yes,
So managing that
fear
hopium.
agreed.
Yeah.
Fear agreed. Absolutely. So yeah, we've wanted to have the solution to basically say, look, like, here's the platform, here's where I could go invest my money confidently, versus just trying to make sort of one-off judgment calls on whatever is hot in the particular point in time.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, please give Sadie our best, and it was great to have you back.
I will do. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. See you next time.